When Nia Adesanya lands the opportunity to prove herself at Seoul's most prestigious company, she thinks her promotion is finally within reach. But fate has other plans. The infuriatingly perfect intern she's been assigned to train is hiding something, and their electric chemistry threatens to cross every professional line she's drawn. What starts as mentorship quickly turns into something far more dangerous, and soon, Nia finds herself caught in a web of attraction, secrets, and a truth that will turn her world upside down. If you're ready for a story about forbidden romance, corporate intrigue, and swoon-worthy chemistry, hit that subscribe button right now because you're not going to want to miss a single second of this. Drop a comment telling me what you think about this amazing story. Now, let's dive in. Jay stood on the balcony of his penthouse, 63 floors above Seoul's glittering skyline. The wind whipped at his black suit jacket, but he didn't move. Below, the city pulsed with life, neon signs bleeding color into the night. Up here, everything felt cold and calculated. His phone vibrated. He didn't need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. "You've made your decision, then." His father's voice cut through the line like steel on stone. Jay's jaw tightened. "I start Monday. As an intern." The word dripped with disappointment. "You'll embarrass this family." "I'll learn the company from the ground up. Like you should have done." A beat of silence, long enough for Jay to imagine his father's lip curling in disgust. "You think respect is earned," his father said. "It isn't. It's taken." Jay's grip tightened around the phone. "This family doesn't survive because we play fair," his father continued. "We win because we are feared. The world doesn't care how noble you are. It only cares how strong you appear." "And maybe that's the problem," Jay said, staring out over the city his family controlled. "Maybe fear isn't leadership." Another cold silence, then, "You'll learn soon enough. People don't follow ideals. They follow power. And if you reject the throne I'm giving you, someone else will take it." He ended the call and stared at the city that would become his testing ground. Somewhere down there, his future waited. And he had no idea it would arrive in the form of a woman with iced coffee and impossibly high standards. Nia Adesanya was going to be late, and that was absolutely unacceptable. She dodged through the Gangnam morning crowd, her heels clicking a frantic rhythm against the pavement. The iced Americano in her left hand threatened to slosh over with every hurried step, but she'd perfected the art of speed walking without spillage over 3 years at Park Industries. Today was important. Today, the board would review candidates for Director of Strategy. Today, her presentation on market expansion into West Africa would prove she wasn't just good at her job. She was irreplaceable. Her phone buzzed with a video call. Chi's face filled the screen, her best friend's grin entirely too enthusiastic for 7:30 in the morning. "Is today the day?" Chi practically squealed. "Tell me you're wearing the power suit. Navy Chanel, gold accessories. I look like I could negotiate peace treaties." "That's my girl. You're going to absolutely destroy that presentation. They'd be insane not to promote you." Nia smiled despite her racing pulse. Chi had been her rock since she'd moved to Seoul, the only person who understood what it meant to be a black woman navigating Korean corporate culture. They'd met at a networking event and bonded over their shared love of K-dramas and their shared frustration with being underestimated. "I have to go. Apparently, they're assigning me an intern today." Chi's eyes widened. "An intern? Nia, you don't have time to babysit. Tell me about it. I'll call you after the meeting." She ended the call and pushed through Park Industries' glass doors, the blast of air conditioning raising goosebumps on her skin. The lobby stretched before her like a temple to capitalism, all marble and money and the faint scent of expensive cologne. The elevator ride to the 15th floor gave her exactly 90 seconds to center herself. She straightened her blazer, checked her reflection in the polished steel doors, and reminded herself that she'd earned her place here. Every late night, every perfectly executed strategy, every moment of proving herself had led to this. The doors opened, and she stepped into organized chaos. Her department hummed with pre-meeting energy. Junior analysts hunched over laptops, fingers flying across keyboards. The coffee machine gurgled in the break room. Someone was arguing in rapid Korean about market projections. Nia's desk sat in the corner, her small kingdom of organized files and color-coded sticky notes. She'd barely set down her coffee when her manager appeared, a thin man named Director Huang, who smiled like he was doing complicated math in his head. Adesanya, see, good morning. Your intern is waiting in conference room B. She blinked. Now? I have the presentation in 2 hours. Perfect timing for him to observe. He's eager to learn. Director Huang's smile widened in a way that made Nia's instincts prickle. The CEO specifically requested he be placed with our best strategist. The compliment should have pleased her, but something in his tone felt off. Still, she nodded and made her way to the conference room, mentally preparing herself to deal with an overeager college student who probably thought strategy meant playing StarCraft. She pushed open the door and froze. The man standing by the window was not what she expected. He was tall, easily 6 feet, with the kind of bone structure that belonged on magazine covers rather than in corporate conference rooms. His black hair fell slightly over his forehead in that effortlessly styled way that probably took 20 minutes to achieve. His suit fit him like it had been tailored by someone who understood that fabric could be art. But it was his eyes that caught her. Dark and assessing, they swept over her with an intensity that made her spine straighten automatically. "You're the intern?" The words came out more skeptical than she'd intended. He moved away from the window, his gait lazy and confident. "Jay Park. And you must be the legendary Nia Adesanya." His English was flawless, touched with an accent she couldn't quite place. British boarding school, maybe? Or international upbringing. Legendary is generous, competent works. She set her coffee on the table and pulled out her tablet. "I'll be honest with you, Jay. I don't have a lot of time for hand-holding. I have a major presentation today, and if you're here to learn, you'll need to keep up." "I appreciate directness." He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and understated. "I promise not to disappoint you." The way he said it made heat creep up her neck. She cleared her throat and pulled up her presentation files. "Great. Then let's start with what you know about market analysis." "Very little," he said smoothly. "That's why I'm here." Nia glanced up sharply. Something about his tone suggested that wasn't entirely true, but before she could question it, he pulled out his phone to check the time and knocked her iced Americano directly into her lap. The cold liquid hit her like a shock, soaking through her carefully chosen skirt. She gasped and jumped back, but the damage was done. "I'm so sorry." Jay grabbed napkins from the side table, but Nia snatched them from his hands. "It's fine, just—" She dabbed at the spreading stain, her perfect morning dissolving into chaos. Of course this happens today. I'll buy you another. What I need is a dry cleaning service and a time machine." She looked down at her ruined outfit and felt the day's careful planning crumble. "This was my power suit." "You don't need it." The words came out quiet, and when she looked up, Jay was watching her with something that might have been admiration. "You're intimidating enough without the suit." Their eyes met, and for a moment the spilled coffee didn't matter. The presentation didn't matter. Nothing existed except the strange electricity crackling in the space between them. Then Nia blinked and stepped back, breaking whatever spell had formed. "I need to change. Don't touch anything." She grabbed her emergency blazer from her desk and retreated to the bathroom, her heart hammering for reasons that had nothing to do with caffeine. When she returned, 15 minutes Later, Jay stood exactly where she'd left him. He'd cleaned up the spill and repositioned the chairs. His expression remained carefully neutral, but something in his posture suggested he was fighting a smile. "Are you always this unprepared?" she asked, settling into her chair with as much dignity as she could muster. The corner of his mouth twitched. "Are you always this intimidating?" "Yes, and if you want to survive here, you'll need to get used to it." "Looking forward to it." The challenge in his voice made her pause. This was not going to be a typical internship. Something told her Jay Park was going to be far more complicated than she'd bargained for. The conference room filled quickly at 9 sharp. Nia's team filtered in with their laptops and nervous energy. The usual pre-presentation jitters amplified by the fact that board members would be evaluating everyone today, not just her. Jay took a seat in the back corner, his posture relaxed in a way that suggested he'd spent time in far more intimidating rooms than this. Nia tried not to notice how his presence seemed to shift the atmosphere, how several of her female colleagues suddenly became very interested in their hair and posture. Director Huang entered with 3 board members trailing behind him. Nia recognized them immediately, the sharks who would decide her future. She stood, smoothing her backup skirt, and launched into her presentation with the confidence of someone who'd rehearsed this pitch 20 times. "Our expansion into West African markets represents a 38% growth opportunity over the next 3 years." She clicked to her first slide, a color-coded map that highlighted target countries. Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya show particularly strong indicators for luxury goods consumption. The board members nodded, taking notes. So far, so good. Consumer spending in Lagos alone has increased by... Those projections assume political stability, a voice cut in from the back. Every head in the room turned to Jay. He sat forward now, his casual demeanor replaced by something sharper. More focused. Nia felt her professional smile tighten. "I'm sorry?" "Nigeria's currency volatility, Ghana's inflation rates, Kenya's recent policy shifts on foreign investment." He spoke with the easy authority of someone presenting facts, not challenging her. "Your numbers are solid if conditions remain static, but you're not accounting for regional instability factors." The room went silent. An intern had just questioned her analysis in front of the board. Nia's first instinct was to shut him down, but something stopped her. Because he wasn't wrong. She'd hedged those risks in her appendix but hadn't featured them prominently, worried it might weaken her pitch. "You've done your homework?" she said slowly, meeting his gaze across the room. The challenge in his eyes made her pulse quicken. "Those are valid concerns, which is why we've structured the investment in phases, with built-in exit strategies if volatility exceeds acceptable thresholds." She clicked to a slide she'd planned to skip, one that detailed risk mitigation. "We're not going in blind, Mr. Park. We're going in prepared." Something flickered across his face. Respect, maybe, or interest. "Smart," he said softly. Director Huang cleared his throat. "Thank you for that." "Enthusiasm, Intern Park." "Ms. Adesanya, please continue." The rest of the presentation went smoothly, but Nia couldn't shake the awareness of Jay's attention on her. Every time she glanced his way, he was watching with an intensity that made her stumble over words she'd practiced perfectly. When the board members finally filed out, murmuring their approval, Nia gathered her materials with shaking hands. She'd nailed it. Even with the unexpected interruption, she'd proven herself. The room emptied quickly, leaving just her and Jay. "That was quite a performance," she said, not looking at him. "For someone who knows very little about market analysis." He stood and moved to where she was packing up her laptop. Too close. Close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "I might have undersold my knowledge." "You think?" She finally met his eyes and immediately regretted it. Up close, they were devastating. "You made me look unprepared." "I made you look brilliant," You turned a challenge into proof that you'd already thought 5 steps ahead. He tilted his head, studying her. You're better under pressure, I wanted to see it. The audacity of that statement stole her breath. You wanted to… Who do you think you are? Someone who appreciates competence when he sees it. His gaze dropped to her lips for a fraction of a second before returning to her eyes. And you, Nia Adesanya, are exceptionally competent. The way he said her full name, with that slight emphasis on each syllable, did something dangerous to her composure. This was her intern. This was inappropriate. This was… Nia! She burst through the door, then stopped short when she saw Jay. Her eyes went wide, then wider, then cartoonishly wide. Oh. Sorry, I didn't realize you were… mentoring. Jay stepped back smoothly, that lazy smile returning. I was just leaving. Thank you for the lesson, Ms. Adesanya. He moved past Chi, who physically turned to watch him go. When the door closed, she whirled on Nia. That's your intern? That's the person you have to babysit? Chi fanned herself dramatically. Girl, I volunteer as tribute. Chi… No, seriously. Does HR know he looks like that? That should come with a warning label. Caution. May cause spontaneous loss of professional judgment. Nia sank into a chair and pressed her palms to her heated cheeks. He's trouble. The best kind of trouble. Chi perched on the edge of the table. He was looking at you like you were the only person in the room. He's an intern. He's probably 23. He's not 23. No 23-year-old wears a suit like that or challenges board presentations with that kind of confidence. Chi's expression turned serious. Be careful. That man is hiding something. Nia knew Chi was right, but knowing something and acting on it were two very different things. The rest of that first week passed in a careful dance of professionalism. Jay was a quick study, absorbing everything she taught him, asking questions that were too insightful, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. By Friday, Nia had learned to ignore the flutter in her stomach when he leaned over her shoulder to look at her screen, the way his cologne lingered after he left a room, the knowing smile that suggested he was very aware of the effect he had on her. Week 2 started with Jay rotating through different departments. Marketing on Monday, finance on Tuesday. Nia told herself the relief she felt was about reclaiming her workspace, not about missing his presence. She was lying to herself. Wednesday afternoon, she walked into the executive floor's break room and found Chi standing in front of Minjun's desk through his open office door, her hands gesturing wildly. I don't care if it's policy, Chi was saying hotly. If you're going to implement new expense protocols, maybe communicate them before people book non-refundable travel. She cut off when she saw Nia in the hallway. Relief flooded her features. Oh, thank God. Please tell this man that basic communication is not an unreasonable expectation. Nia stepped into Minjun's office. He sat behind his desk like a king on a throne, his expression carved from ice. He was handsome in a severe way, sharp jawline, cold eyes, tailored suit that probably cost more than Nia's monthly rent. Where Jay radiated warmth underneath his polish, Minjun was all edges. Ms. Adesanya, he said coolly, does your friend always storm executive offices? Your assistant wasn't at her desk. Chi shot back. And maybe I wouldn't need to storm anywhere if finance didn't make decisions that affect everyone without consultation. A muscle ticked in Minjun's jaw. The decision was made at the board level. I'm simply implementing it. Then implement it with better communication. They stared at each other, the air crackling with tension that had nothing to do with expense reports. Nia recognized that particular brand of hostility, the kind that masked something else entirely. Chi, she said gently, let's grab coffee and figure this out. Chi blinked, as if remembering where she was. Her professional mask slammed back into place. Fine. Thank you for your time, Director Choi. The formal address made Minjun's expression tighten further, but he said nothing as Chi swept out of the office with Nia following. That man, Chi hissed once they were in the elevator, is the most infuriating human I've ever encountered. He seemed equally thrilled with you. Good. I hope his expensive suit gets caught in a cab door. Chi pressed the button with more force than necessary. How's your week going? Better than mine, I hope. Nia thought of Jay and his knowing smiles and the way her body responded to his proximity. It's complicated. Complicated like your intern is too attractive to function around, or complicated like something else? Both. Neither. I don't know. The elevator doors opened. There's something about him, Chi. Something he's not saying. Maybe he's a chaebol heir doing some kind of undercover boss thing. Nia laughed. That only happens in dramas. Girl, your life is a drama. You're the brilliant strategist training a suspiciously overqualified intern who looks at you like you're the answer to a question he hasn't asked yet. Chi bumped her shoulder. Just be careful. Hearts are messier than spreadsheets. By Tuesday of week 2, Nia had decided that distance was the answer. If Jay was going to be distracting, she'd simply bury him in work so tedious he wouldn't have energy left for those loaded glances and knowing smiles. She assigned him the most mind-numbing task she could think of: organizing 5 years of supplier contracts into a new database system. It was work that typically took interns weeks to complete, and she'd given him until end of week. She expected complaints. Maybe some subtle pushback. What she got instead was Jay setting up at the empty desk beside hers, rolling up his sleeves to reveal forearms that had no business being that distracting, and diving into the work with focused silence. The afternoon crawled by. Nia tried to concentrate on her own projects, but her attention kept drifting to the man beside her. The way his brow furrowed when he encountered a filing inconsistency. How he unconsciously bit his lower lip when deep in thought. The efficient grace of his fingers flying across the keyboard. You're staring, he said without looking up. Nia jerked her gaze back to her screen. I'm supervising. Is that what we're calling it? The corner of his mouth quirked up. Because it feels like something else. You're very confident for someone filing contracts. I'm confident because I'm very good at filing contracts. He finally looked at her, and the humor in his eyes made her stomach flip. Among other things, the innuendo was subtle enough to be deniable, but it landed all the same. Nia cleared her throat and stood abruptly. I need to check something with Director Huang. Running away, Miss Adesanya. From you? Please. But even she heard the lack of conviction in her voice. When she returned 20 minutes later, after a meeting she definitely didn't need to have, she found a coffee waiting on her desk. Iced Americano, perfectly prepared, with a sticky note that read, "For supervising so diligently, JP." Something warm unfurled in her chest. Dangerous. This was dangerous. Thank you, she said, settling back into her chair. Don't mention it. Jay glanced at her, then did a double take. You're smiling. That's dangerous. Why? Because it makes me want to do things that would definitely violate those boundaries we should probably establish. We have boundaries. Very clear ones. Do we? Because from where I'm sitting, those boundaries keep getting blurry. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite their surroundings. Tell me I'm imagining it, and I'll stop. Nia's heart hammered. She should tell him exactly that, should shut this down before it became something she couldn't control. But the words wouldn't come. The contracts, she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. Focus on the contracts. Jay's smile was slow and knowing. Yes, ma'am. They worked in charged silence for the rest of the afternoon, the air between them crackling with everything they weren't saying. Thursday afternoon of week 2, Nia was deep in analysis when Jay appeared at her desk. He'd returned from his finance rotation, and something about his expression seemed troubled. Can I buy you coffee? He asked. To replace the one I destroyed on my first day? She should say no, should maintain boundaries. but she found herself nodding instead. They walked to the cafe across the street in comfortable silence. Jay ordered her exact drink, iced Americano with 1 pump of vanilla, without asking. "How did you know?" she asked as they settled into a corner booth. "I pay attention." He took a sip of his own coffee. "You always get the same thing. Same time every day. Creatures of habit. Strategists. Or maybe I just know what I like." "That too." His gaze held hers a beat too long before he looked away. "I wanted to thank you. For this week. For these 2 weeks. Actually. You didn't have to take me on, and I know I'm more work than a typical intern." "You're definitely that." She studied him over her cup. "You're also brilliant. Frustrating, but brilliant." "Frustrating?" "You ask questions that make me rethink everything. You see patterns I miss. You push back when most interns would just nod and take notes." She paused. "It's unsettling." "Unsettling bad or unsettling good?" "I haven't decided yet." Jay's smile was slow and devastating. "I'll try to tip the scales toward good." "You can start by telling me why Min-jun looked at you like he knew you when you passed him in the hall yesterday." The smile faltered. "Did he?" "Don't deflect. You two know each other." "We've met before. Family connections." He shifted the conversation quickly. "He's intense. I don't know how your friend deals with him." "Chi can handle anyone." Nia's phone buzzed with a message from Director Huang about the follow-up presentation. "Speaking of handling things, I have a new project. 3-week deadline, you're going to help." "Another impossible task?" "The best kind." As they walked back to the office, Jay's hand brushed hers. Just for a second. Just long enough to send electricity up her arm. Neither of them acknowledged it. But neither of them pulled away. Week 3 arrived with Director Huang's impossible deadline hanging over them like a storm cloud. The follow-up analysis needed to be comprehensive, bulletproof, and ready for board review in 3 weeks, which meant late nights, which meant more time alone with Jay, which meant Nia was in serious trouble. By Wednesday of week 3, they'd fallen into a rhythm. Most of the office would empty by 7, leaving them alone with humming computers and the weight of unspoken attraction. Jay had stopped pretending to need guidance. Now they worked as equals, bouncing ideas off each other, challenging assumptions, building something exceptional. "The infrastructure costs in Lagos are higher than you projected," Jay said that evening, highlighting a section of the spreadsheet. "By about 15%. Nia leaned over to look, her shoulder brushing his. The contact sent electricity up her arm, but she forced herself to focus on the numbers. "Where are you getting that figure?" "Recent construction reports. Currency exchange shifts from last month." He pulled up 3 different sources, all meticulously documented. "You were using outdated data." She should have been annoyed that he'd found an error. Instead, she was impressed. "You're right. Good catch. I live to serve." His tone was light, but when she glanced up, his expression was serious, focused. The playful intern from week 1 had been replaced by someone who understood exactly what was at stake. They worked in comfortable silence for another hour, the only sounds the clicking of keyboards and the occasional shuffle of papers. Outside the windows, Seoul glittered like a circuit board, all neon and possibility. Thursday evening, the office completely empty, Nia rolled her shoulders trying to ease the tension building in her neck. 3 weeks suddenly felt impossible. There was so much data to analyze, so many variables to account for. "Hey," Jay's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "Take a break. You're going to burn out before we even get to the hard part." "I'm fine." "You've been staring at that same paragraph for 5 minutes." He stood and moved to her side of the table. "Stand up." "Jay." "Trust me, stand up." Against her better judgment, she did. He moved behind her, and before she could process what was happening, his hand settled on her shoulders. The touch was firm and warm and entirely too perfect. "What are you doing?" Her voice came out breathier than intended. "Helping?" His thumbs pressed into the knots in her shoulders, and she nearly groaned at the relief. "You're carrying all your stress right here. If you don't relax, you'll give yourself a migraine." It was practical, professional even. There was no reason for her pulse to spike or her breath to catch. But when his fingers worked along the column of her neck, finding pressure points she didn't know existed, all her carefully constructed defenses crumbled. "This is definitely crossing a boundary," she managed. "Probably." His voice was low, close to her ear. "Want me to stop?" She should say yes, should step away and reinforce every rule they'd established. Instead, she closed her eyes and let herself have this one moment of weakness. "No." His hands stilled for a heartbeat, then continued their work with deliberate care. The massage was competent, almost therapeutic, but underneath ran a current of something far more dangerous. Every point of contact burned. "Where did you learn to do this?" she asked, desperate for conversation to ground her. "Boarding school. Long story." His thumb traced the curve where her neck met her shoulder, and she shivered. "You work too hard, you know that?" Says the intern who's been here just as long as I have. "I'm not the one carrying the weight of a promotion on my shoulders." His hands moved lower, working out a knot that made her wince. "You're already brilliant, Nia. They'd be idiots not to see it." The praise, combined with his touch, threatened to undo her completely. "You don't know me well enough to make that assessment. I know you're smarter than anyone else in that meeting 3 weeks ago. I know you turned my challenge into an advantage without missing a beat. I know you care deeply about doing things right, even when no one's watching." His hands stilled, resting warm and heavy on her shoulders. "And I know that every time I get close to you, you stop breathing for exactly 2 seconds before you remember you're supposed to be professional." Nia's eyes flew open. She turned to face him, which was a mistake because it put them inches apart. His dark eyes held hers, unguarded and intense. "This can't happen," she said, but even she heard the lack of conviction in her voice. "I know. You're my intern. I'm your supervisor. There are rules." "I know." "Then why are you looking at me like that?" Jay's gaze dropped to her lips, then back up. "Because I've been thinking about kissing you since the moment you walked into that conference room on my first day. Because watching you command that boardroom made me want to push you against a wall and show you exactly what you do to me. Because every professional reason I have to stay away from you is being drowned out by the fact that I've never wanted anyone the way I want you." The confession hung between them, raw and honest and completely devastating. Nia's heart hammered against her ribs. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the tension in his jaw as he held himself back. Before she could respond, before she could do something catastrophically stupid, her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She grabbed it like a lifeline, stepping back and putting necessary distance between them. Chi's name flashed on the screen. "I need to take this," she answered without waiting for his response. "Chi? Please tell me you're not still at the office." Her friend's voice carried concern and exasperation in equal measure. "I'm finishing up the analysis." "Nia, it's almost 10. Even workaholics need sleep." "I'm fine, really." She avoided looking at Jay, who had returned to his side of the table and was very deliberately focused on his laptop. "I'll head home soon." "Mm-hmm. And is your devastatingly attractive intern still there?" Chi. "That's a yes." "Okay. Listen. I'm saying this because I love you. Be careful. Whatever is happening between you two, it's written all over your face. Other people are going to notice. Nothing is happening. Girl, I saw how he looked at you 3 weeks ago, And I'm betting he's looking at you the same way right now, even though you're on the phone with me. Something is definitely happening, even if you're both too stubborn to admit it. After Chi hung up, Nia stood at the window, staring out at the city and trying to sort through the chaos in her head. Behind her, she heard Jay moving around, the soft sounds of him organizing his materials. "I should go," he said quietly. "Let you work in peace." "You don't have to." "I do." He shouldered his bag, and when she turned to face him, his expression was carefully neutral again. The vulnerable man from moments ago had disappeared behind the intern mask. "Besides, you were right earlier. We need boundaries. I keep forgetting that." "Jay. See you tomorrow, Ms. Adesanya." The formal address felt like a wall going up between them. "Get some rest." He left before she could respond, and Nia was alone with spreadsheets and the echo of words that felt too honest for 3 weeks of knowing someone. The rest of week 3 and into week 4 passed in a new kind of tension. Jay maintained perfect professionalism during work hours. Polite, efficient, brilliant. But there were moments. Small moments that felt loaded with everything they weren't saying. The way he'd hand her coffee and let his fingers linger against hers for a fraction too long. How he'd lean over her, shoulder to point at something on her screen, close enough that she could feel his breath on her neck. The times she'd catch him watching her with an expression that made her forget how to breathe. Friday of week 4, the break room incident happened. Nia walked in to find Jay leaning against the counter, tie loosened, talking to Andre from marketing. Andre was laughing at something, his charm on full display. "Nia." Andre's face lit up when he saw her. "Perfect timing. I was just telling Jay here that you're the person to know at Park Industries. Smart, gorgeous, and she makes even the boring reports interesting." "That's quite the endorsement," Jay said, his expression unreadable. "I'm serious. Those earrings, for example." Andre gestured at the gold hoops she'd worn. "They caught my eye in this morning's meeting. Very elegant." "Thank you, Andre." Nia moved past them to the coffee machine. "We should grab lunch sometime," Andre continued. "There's a new fusion place in Itaewon." "That sounds nice," Nia said, pouring her coffee. "I'll check my schedule." Andre's smile widened. "Great. I'll send you the details." When he left, Nia turned to find Jay watching her with an unreadable expression. "He seems friendly," Jay said carefully. "Andre's harmless. He flirts with everyone." "Does everyone say yes when he asks them to lunch?" Nia raised an eyebrow. "Are you asking if I'm interested in him?" "I'm asking if you're going." The audacity of the question should have annoyed her, but there was something almost vulnerable in the way he asked it, like her answer mattered more than it should. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "Why do you care?" Jay opened his mouth, then closed it, shook his head slightly. "I don't. Sorry. That was inappropriate." He left before she could respond, but Nia noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had briefly clenched before he'd forced them to relax. She found herself smiling despite everything. Interesting. Week 5 brought an unexpected shift. Director Huang pulled Nia into his office Monday morning with news that made her stomach drop. "The board wants the presentation moved up," he said, that calculating smile firmly in place. 2 weeks instead of 3. They're impressed with the preliminary work and want to fast-track the decision on the director position. 2 weeks. Nia's mind raced through everything left to do. It was possible, barely, but it would mean even longer hours, even more time alone with Jay. "We can do it," she said, because what else could she say? "Excellent." "Oh, and Nia?" Director Huang's smile widened. "The CEO has been following your intern's progress closely. Very closely. Make sure he's involved in every aspect of this presentation." There was that strange emphasis again, that suggestion of something more beneath the surface. But Nia didn't have time to analyze it. She had 2 weeks to create something exceptional. That evening, she broke the news to Jay. They were alone in the conference room, surrounded by spreadsheets and half-empty coffee cups. 2 weeks? Jay's eyebrows rose. That's aggressive. That's corporate. Nia rubbed her temples. We'll need to work through the weekend, late nights, early mornings. If you need to back out, I'm not backing out. He said it with such certainty that she looked up. Whatever you need, Nia. I'm here. The way he said it made something warm bloom in her chest. Dangerous. This was getting more dangerous by the day. They ordered dinner that night. Thai food that arrived in steaming containers, filling the conference room with the scent of basil and lemongrass. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from spending weeks learning each other's rhythms. Can I ask you something? Nia said, breaking the quiet. Anything? Why are you really here? And don't say it's to learn. You're too good at this to be starting from scratch. Jay set down his chopsticks, and for a split second something flickered across his face. Panic, maybe, or calculation. He couldn't tell her. Not yet. 2 months of planning, of convincing his father this was the right way, of setting up this entire elaborate test. It would all be worthless if he revealed himself now, especially to her. Especially because of how he was starting to feel about her. He forced his expression into something casual, almost sheepish. Maybe I just had really good professors. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. He picked up his chopsticks again, avoiding her probing gaze. Family expectations, you know. They wanted me to get experience before joining the family business. Very boring stuff. He could see her processing that, weighing whether to push. The strategist in her knew he was deflecting, but something in her expression softened and she let it go. For now. What kind of business? She asked instead. Import-export. Really, incredibly boring. He shifted the conversation quickly. What about you? What made you choose strategy? The deflection worked. She leaned back, considering the question. I like puzzles, finding solutions that no one else sees, making order out of chaos. That's very fitting. His voice softened despite himself. You're good at seeing what others miss. Is that a compliment or a warning? Both, maybe. He met her gaze. And damn it, he was supposed to be keeping his distance. You're observant, Nia. It's one of the things I admire about you. The way he said her name made her pulse visible at her throat. They'd known each other 5 weeks, but something about this felt inevitable. Like meeting someone you'd been meant to find all along. We should get back to work, she said, but neither of them moved. The silence stretched, comfortable but charged. Outside, Seoul's lights blurred into streaks of gold and neon. Jay stood first, gathering their trash. He shouldn't say anything else. Should keep it professional. Should remember why he was here and what was at stake. But then he turned back to look at her, and the words came out anyway. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I'm glad I'm here. Even if it's complicated. Complicated is an understatement. He moved closer, drawn by gravity he couldn't fight. I know I'm making this harder for you. The timing is terrible. The situation is impossible. And you have every reason to keep me at arm's length. Another step. But I can't regret meeting you, Nia. Even if I should. Her breath caught. Why? Because you're brilliant, and you don't even realize how much. Because you challenge me without trying. Because when you smile, really smile, not that polite work smile, it feels like the sun coming out. He stopped just in front of her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating between them. And because I have a feeling you're going to completely ruin me for anyone else. The confession hung between them, vulnerable and dangerous. Nia's hands trembled slightly at her sides. What are we doing? She whispered. Honestly, I have no idea. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was tender, careful, like she was something precious. But I know I've never felt like this before. Not this fast, not this certain. Jay, tell me to stop, he said quietly, his hand still lingering near her face. Tell me this is just my imagination and I'll never bring it up again. I'll be the perfect intern. Professional, appropriate, forgettable. The word hung in the air. Forgettable. As if he could ever be that. Nia's mind raced. This was her promotion on the line, her career. Everything she'd sacrificed for 3 years, the late nights, the missed calls from friends back home, the constant proving and reproving herself in a country that wasn't hers, in a language that still sometimes felt foreign, in a corporate culture that demanded perfection. She thought about Chi's warning, about the way people would look at her if they knew, about how quickly brilliant strategist could become the woman who slept with her intern. She thought about the director position, so close she could taste it, about the respect she'd earned, the authority she'd built, the future she'd planned so carefully. And she thought about Jay, how he looked at her like she hung the moon, how he challenged her without diminishing her, how her body came alive in his presence in a way she'd never experienced before. Stop. The word came out barely above a whisper, but it landed like a gunshot. She watched the light dim in his eyes, watched his hand fall away from her face like he'd been burned. She wanted to take it back, wanted to close the distance between them and show him exactly how much she didn't want him to stop. But her feet stayed planted, her hands stayed at her sides, and her career stayed intact. For now. Jay stepped back, and the distance felt like miles. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral, all warmth stripped away. Okay. The word came out rough. Okay, I understand. He turned away, and Nia watched his shoulders tense, watched him gather his bag with movements that were just a fraction too controlled. The intern mask slid back into place, smooth and practiced, but she could see the cracks underneath. Get some rest, Ms. Adesanya. The formal address felt like a slap. We have a long 2 weeks ahead. He moved toward the door and panic flared in her chest. She wanted to call him back, wanted to explain that it wasn't about not wanting him. It was about wanting her career more, or at least, wanting to protect it. Jay. He paused, not quite looking at her. Yeah? She didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, I don't mean it. Come back. But none of those words would change the reality of their situation. Thank you, she managed finally, for understanding. He nodded once, a sharp, brittle motion. Then he left without another word, the door closing behind him with a soft click that felt deafening. Nia stood alone in the conference room, surrounded by spreadsheets and the ghost of his cologne. Her hands trembled as she gathered her materials. The promotion suddenly felt hollow. The perfectly organized chaos of her work suddenly felt empty. She'd just made either the smartest decision of her career or the biggest mistake of her life. And as she stood there in the fluorescent light with Seoul glittering outside, she had absolutely no idea which. The next morning, Jay arrived exactly on time with a professional smile and a polite, "Good morning, Ms. Adesanya." The easy warmth was gone, replaced by efficient courtesy. They worked side by side for the next week, and it was torture. Every accidental brush of hands felt like fire. Every time their eyes met across the conference table, Nia saw the want he was trying to hide. But he kept his distance, maintained his professionalism, and slowly, painfully, Nia realized she'd gotten exactly what she asked for. And she hated it. Week 6 bled into Week 7. The presentation came together beautifully, comprehensive, bulletproof, exactly what the board needed to see. But the victory felt hollow when she couldn't celebrate it with the one person who'd helped make it happen. Friday evening, 1 week before the presentation, Nia worked alone. Jay had left at 5 sharp, citing other commitments. She told herself the disappointment she felt was about losing her work partner, not about missing his presence. She was lying to herself. Her phone buzzed with a notification, a company newsletter about the upcoming charity gala. Park Industries' biggest event of the year, scheduled for the weekend after her presentation. The theme this year was Innovation and Legacy. The gala, where the CEO would finally make his appearance, where the director position would likely be announced, where everything she'd worked for would finally pay off. If she survived the presentation first, if she could get through these final weeks without breaking. Presentation day arrived with the weight of weeks of work and unresolved tension. Nia stood in the bathroom, adjusting her blazer and giving herself a pep talk in the mirror. This was it. The moment that would determine her future at Park Industries. When she returned to gather her materials, she found a sticky note on top of her presentation folder. "You're going to be brilliant. Not that you need me to tell you that. JP?" Her chest tightened. She tucked the note into her pocket and headed to the boardroom, her heart hammering for reasons that had nothing to do with the presentation. The boardroom was packed. Board members, executives, Director Huang, all the people who would decide if she was director material. Jay sat in the back corner, his expression carefully neutral, but when their eyes met for a fraction of a second, she saw everything he was trying to hide. Nia took her place at the front, connected her laptop, and began. "Our revised West African expansion strategy addresses every concern raised in our initial review," she started, her voice steady and confident. "We've accounted for political instability, currency volatility, and infrastructure challenges while maintaining a 38% growth projection over 3 years." She clicked through slides, each one more polished than the last. The data was irrefutable. The logic was sound. She could see the board members nodding, taking notes, leaning forward with interest. This was hers. She could feel it. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then one of the board members started clapping. Others joined in. Director Huang stood, smiling that calculating smile. "Exceptional work, Adesanya. This is exactly the level of strategic thinking we need at the director level." Her heart soared. This was it. The acknowledgement she'd been working toward for 3 years. "We'll make our final decision at the gala this weekend," another board member added. "But I think it's safe to say you've made a very strong case for yourself." As the room emptied, Nia gathered her materials with shaking hands. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. "Congratulations." Jay's voice came from behind her, quiet and genuine. "That was incredible." She turned to face him, and for a moment the professional mask slipped. She saw pride in his eyes, admiration, and underneath it all, that same want she'd been trying so hard to ignore. "We did it," she corrected. "Your research made the difference. You made it matter. There's a difference." He held her gaze for a beat too long, then stepped back. "I'll see you at the gala tomorrow night." He left before she could respond, and Nia stood alone in the empty boardroom, clutching her presentation materials and wondering why success felt so incomplete. Saturday evening arrived with champagne wishes and designer gowns. Nia stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the emerald green dress she'd saved 3 months to buy. It hugged her curves perfectly, the silk catching the light as she moved. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, gold earrings glinting at her ears. She looked like she belonged in this world, like she belonged at the top. "You're going to break hearts tonight," Chi said from the doorway, having insisted on helping her get ready. "That intern of yours is going to swallow his tongue when he sees you. It doesn't matter what Jay thinks. Keep telling yourself that." Chi's expression turned serious. "Are you ready for this? The announcement, I mean. Everything changes after tonight." I've been ready for 3 years. The gala was held at the Grand Hyatt. The ballroom transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across marble floors. Men in tuxedos and women in designer gowns mingled with champagne glasses, the air thick with money and ambition. Nia arrived fashionably late, taking a moment at the entrance to steady her nerves. This was her world now. Or it would be, once they announced her promotion. She'd barely made it 3 steps inside when Andre appeared, looking sharp in his tuxedo. Nia, you look absolutely stunning. He offered his arm. Let me get you a drink. She let him lead her to the bar, aware of eyes tracking her movement across the room. She was being evaluated, assessed, judged. Every interaction tonight mattered. To your inevitable promotion, Andre said, handing her a glass of champagne. Everyone's talking about your presentation. You crushed it. Thank you, Andre. I mean it. When they announce you as director of strategy, I want to be the first to. He cut off abruptly, his attention snagged by something over her shoulder. His expression shifted from charming to wary. Nia turned to see what had caught his attention and nearly dropped her champagne. Jay stood across the ballroom and he was devastating. The tuxedo fit him like it had been made specifically for him, which it probably had. His hair was styled back, revealing the sharp angles of his face. But it was the way he carried himself that made her breath catch. The casual confidence had been replaced by something else entirely. Authority. Power. The bearing of someone who owned every room he entered. He was talking to Min Jun, both of them looking severe and expensive, but his eyes found hers across the crowded ballroom with unerring accuracy. The impact of his gaze hit her like a physical force. I should go say hello to some people, Andre said quickly, practically fleeing. Nia stood frozen as Jay crossed the ballroom toward her, the crowd seeming to part without him even trying. People noticed him. People watched him. And as he got closer, she realized with growing confusion that some of them were bowing slightly, showing deference. To an intern? He stopped in front of her, and up close, the effect was even more overwhelming. Ms. Adesanya. His voice was low, intimate despite the formal address. You look. He paused, his jaw tightening. Incredible. You clean up well yourself. Her voice came out breathier than intended. I didn't realize interns had tuxedos like that. Something flickered in his expression. Guilt, maybe. Or resignation. Nia, there's something I need to tell you. Ladies and gentlemen, Director Huang's voice cut through the ballroom from the stage. May I have your attention, please? The crowd quieted, turning toward the front. Nia's heart began to race. This was it. The announcement. Thank you all for joining us tonight for Park Industries' annual charity gala. Director Huang continued. Before we get to the evening's festivities, the CEO would like to make a special announcement. The CEO. Nia had never actually met him. He was notoriously private, rarely making public appearances. Rumor was he had a son being groomed to take over, but she'd never seen him either. An older man took the stage, distinguished and severe in an expensive tuxedo. The room seemed to collectively hold its breath. Thank you for being here tonight, the CEO began, his voice carrying authority. As many of you know, Park Industries has been in my family for 3 generations, but legacy means nothing without evolution, without understanding the people who make this company run. Nia felt Jay tense beside her. She glanced at him, and the expression on his face made her stomach drop. No, it couldn't be. For the past 2 months, the CEO continued, my son has been working on the ground floor of this company, learning from the best and brightest we have to offer, proving that he can earn his place here, not just inherit it. The room erupted in murmurs. Nia's heart hammered against her ribs. I'd like to introduce you all to Park Jae-won. Most of you know him as Jay. but his colleagues these past months knew him as their intern. The CEO smiled, and it was sharp, calculating. Beginning Monday, he will officially assume his role as incoming CEO of Park Industries. The ballroom exploded in polite applause, cameras flashed, people surged forward. And Nia stood frozen, champagne forgotten in her hand, staring at the man beside her. Jay, Park J1, the CEO's son, the incoming CEO, her intern. Nia, he started, his voice tight with something that might have been panic. She took a step back, then another. Her mind raced, pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity, the expensive suits, the perfect instincts, the way Minjun had reacted. The CEO specifically requesting he be placed with their best strategist. She'd been training her future boss. She'd nearly kissed her future boss. She'd told her future boss to stop. You knew. Her voice came out strangled, but she couldn't seem to control it. This whole time, you knew. I couldn't tell you. The whole point was what? To see how the little people live? Despite her best efforts, her voice rose. People were starting to notice. Curious eyes watched with the hungry attention of people who lived for corporate drama. To play intern while I poured everything into teaching you, while I... She cut herself off before she could say something truly damaging. Around them, phones were out. People were recording. This would be all over the office by Monday. Jay's expression was anguished. It wasn't like that. Everything I said to you was real. Everything I felt. Don't. She held up a hand, her professional mask slamming into place even as her heart shattered. Just don't. She set down her champagne glass with a hand that trembled only slightly. When she looked at him again, her expression was perfectly neutral. The strategist. The professional. The woman who would not fall apart in public. Congratulations on your new position, Mr. Park, she said, her voice carrying just enough to be heard by those watching. I'm sure you'll be an excellent CEO. Then she turned and walked away with her head held high, leaving him standing alone in the middle of the ballroom. She made it to the lobby, to the elevator, to her car. She made it home, locked her door, and slid down against it. Only then did she let herself break. 2 months. 2 months of late nights and loaded glances and carefully maintained boundaries. 2 months of falling for someone who'd been lying to her the entire time. 2 months of believing she was mentoring an intern when she'd really been auditioning for her own boss. Her phone buzzed. Text after text, Chi asking if she was okay. Director Huang saying they needed to talk Monday. And one from Jay. Just one, that said, I'm sorry. For everything. But not for meeting you. Never for that. Nia deleted it without responding. Outside her window, Seoul glittered with the same indifference it always had. The city didn't care that her world had just imploded. That her promotion felt meaningless now. That the man she'd tried so hard not to fall for had been someone else entirely. Monday would come. She'd face him as her CEO. She'd be professional and competent and everything she'd always been. But tonight, alone in her apartment with smudged mascara and a broken heart, Nia let herself feel the full weight of what she'd lost and what she'd never really had to begin with. If you love this episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. What do you think? Can Nia forgive Jay? Should she? And what's going to happen when they face each other in the office on Monday? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Episode 2 coming soon. You won't want to miss what happens next.